Brexit positions are taking precedence over old party loyalties. Joining me to discuss that from Wigan is the Labour MP Lisa Nandy. In Surrey is the Conservative MP for Crawley, Henry Smith, and here in Westminster, the Independent MP, now formerly Conservative for Tottenham, Sarah Wollaston. Welcome to you indeed. I mean, you are, example number one, if you like, that the Brexit juggernaut broke up your party loyalties to a certain extent.
Well, that's right. For me, the implications, the real-world implications of no deal were so serious, I didn't really feel I could carry on as a Conservative MP. So I really welcome what's happening in Brecon and Radishire.
Lisa Nandy, I mean, you are in opposition to your party's shifting policy on the EU as well.
Well, I think in a sort of strange way, we all are in one respect and not at all in another. Because the policy at the moment gives us a referendum in some circumstances and potentially seeking a deal in others. And I think the problem in the Labour Party actually in some ways is less serious in that I think most of us had agreed that we wanted to remain in the EU. I think most of us would vote for that still in a second referendum. There's just a difference about whether we think that the referendum result needs to be respected or whether we actually want to seek to overturn it. Now that really does pose massive problems for a political party trying to stake out a coherent position, but it means that the gulf between individuals in that party isn't quite as great, and so we can rub along with a sort of mutual respect and understanding, even if the position that we're presenting to the world is not helping us particularly.
And Mr. Smith, do you think that your Conservative Party is still a broad church that can include Remainers and Leavers?
Yes, I think that is the case. And certainly when I speak to voters in Crawley, what they tell me is, yes, they want to get on with Brexit. That's what they decided 3 years ago. But they also want to move beyond that and start talking about education and healthcare and policing and the other services that people rely on day to day. So I think amongst the electorate, certainly my electorate, they want to see Brexit deliver, but they're not obsessed by it. They want actually us MPs elected to get on with the governing of the country and providing decent public services at the lowest cost to the taxpayer.
But what do you say to people like Philip Hammond or David Gauke or others who are saying, look, the direction we're going on Brexit is one that I wouldn't be able to support in the cabinet?
Well, it's gone beyond Brexit now. This is an issue about trust in our democracy. 3 years ago, as everyone is very well aware, people voted by majority to leave the European Union. And if we are to have trust in our politics, if Parliament is to be respected, then we need to follow through on that decision and then get on with, as I say, delivering the services hopefully the lowest cost to the taxpayer that we can, that people elect us on that job to do. So I would say to colleagues across the House of Commons, step out of the Westminster bubble every now and then and just listen to what the electorate are telling you.
Yeah, look, I think everyone would like Brexit to go away, but the problem is it's not there. It is the big issue. It is the elephant in the room. And it seems to me it's dividing and breaking up party politics.
It is, and all the issues that Henry refers to, yes, of course we need to get on with them, but the NHS will be severely impacted by a no-deal Brexit. There is no consent either in the country or in Parliament for no deal, and I think that's what worries us. And I know worries Lisa as well, but she will speak for herself.
Lisa?
That's absolutely right, and it's one of the reasons why actually I welcome politicians from different political parties trying to work together, because although I'm not in favour of a second referendum, as Sarah is, the overriding imperative for me has always been to prevent a no-deal Brexit, and so there should be huge amounts of common ground across all of the more progressive political parties in order to deliver that.
And as a representative of one of the sort of traditional parties of government, the Labour Party, how do you feel when you see results, as we saw in the European parliamentary elections, or indeed in the opinion polls, of perhaps four parties, the Brexit Party and the Liberal Democrats, really punching pretty much the same weight as your party, the Labour Party?
Well, I think that's a consequence of the fact that for the last few years, we've been out loudly arguing two completely contradictory positions, and I don't think that you can do that. I would much rather see, as Henry was suggesting, that we try to make the case for pragmatism and compromise and a way to leave the European Union with a deal that protects people's jobs and lives and public services. I think there is a problem in the Labour Party, though, that runs much deeper than this, and it's one of the reasons why I think perhaps, despite all of the bitterness in the Tory party, this is much more existential for us, because there is a very live debate going on within the Labour Party about what sort of party we are and who we represent. And we've only ever won power by holding together a working and middle class coalition made up of people who are very socially liberal and people who are socially conservative. And at the moment, Brexit has driven a coach and horses through that, and it is really under threat. And there are some colleagues who feel very strongly that we have to speak for both and want a compromise position. But there are others who are arguing that we should no longer represent areas of the country like mine. That is an existential crisis for the Labour Party and something that really does need to be resolved.
And you've got an existential crisis in the Tory party because you've got the threat of Brexit breathing down your necks, the Brexit party, haven't you, Mr. Smith?
Well, yes, it's unsurprising that the Brexit Party did extremely well in the European parliamentary elections that should never have taken place because we should have already left the European Union in accordance with the instruction given by the British people in the election. And that's one of the reasons why, not just for party political purposes, but actually for the sake of our democracy in this country, we need to make sure that we get Brexit delivered. That was the decision that was made, and as the party of government,
the reason why that's
become that happens.
Such an obsession is because you're worried about losing votes to Nigel Farage. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it?
Well, we should be worried about losing votes to Nigel Farage if we don't deliver Brexit.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, it's all about what's best for the Conservative Party, not what's best for the country. We've seen the Conservative Party moving off to the right, the Labour Party moving off to the left, and everybody talking about what's in their party's interests rather than what's in the country's interests. It's very clearly, all the evidence is that no deal will be a disaster for people, for individuals, communities, for the economy, for the NHS, for science and research, for farmers. I mean, how much more evidence do they need that this is a disaster? And yet people are still talking about what's best for the Conservative Party. It's shocking.
I mean, Lisa, Nandy, you're agreeing with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the policy position that Labour arrived at this week is very much about trying to hold the Labour Party together. Now, I'm sympathetic to that because I think that the Labour Party is incredibly important to this country and is the only prospect, really, of getting rid of the Tories and having a much fairer and more decent country. But Sarah is right that, while we're talking about what's going on within the political parties, we've lost sight of the fact that out there in the country are millions of people who are desperate for something else. Now, she and I might have a different approach to an answer to that. My answer is very much that I'm hearing what Henry is hearing, and I'm hearing people say, we had a referendum, we want to see you get on with it. We don't want to do that at any cost, but we do want to see politicians compromising and working together to make it happen, and it's your job, not ours, to sort it out. I know that Sarah will have a different view, but I do think that notion that we should be trying to act in the best interests of the country and not just obsessing about what is going on in our political parties is absolutely right. And it's one of the reasons why I think the public has just switched off from all of us at the moment. The overwhelming sense on the doorstep is just enough, and people are sick of hearing about it. I mean, to a large extent now, I think it doesn't really matter what positions the parties take because people have zoned out and stopped listening. What really matters is what we do, and we need to stop no deal.
Mr. Smith, do you think there'll still be a Labour and Conservative party in 25 years' time?
I think there probably will be. I'm not going to claim any sort of unique wisdom as to looking into the future. I think we will get beyond this situation. There might be somewhat of a realignment in British politics. But again, I come back to what I was saying a few moments ago. The message I get from the electorate is that we want you to get on with the decision that we made 3 years ago, and then we want you to refocus on the things that matter to us day to day. Things like proper funding for schools, ensuring that we've got the police on our streets for reassurance and addressing crime, and all of the other issues that people expect us to be getting on with. And I would take, of course, as you'd expect me to, a slight issue with Sarah in what she says. I think there are huge opportunities for us once we have left the European Union to be much more of a global nation, to be able to reform the way politics is done in this country domestically as well. And I just don't buy into the project fear that the sun's not going to rise the day after we leave the European Union.
I've never said the sun's not going to rise, but what I'd say is that it's not project fear, it's project reality. I'm a select committee chair, so I have the benefit of listening to the evidence week in, week out, and I suggest Henry goes and reads some of it. If he's looking for funding for hospitals and schools, I'd challenge him to say how that's going to be helped by a no-deal Brexit. And in particular, if I look at farmers, hill farmers in my constituency, they are certainly going to be destroyed by a no-deal Brexit. So there's Brexit reality, real-world consequences, and that's what we should all be focusing on.
I mean, you were originally chosen in an open primary. You're
Yes.
now an independent MP. Do you think, the party system of Labour and Conservative is working?
No, I don't. And they were always broad churches, internal coalitions, and that's been destroyed because they've both moved off to the fringes. So there is a huge gap in the middle and in the centre left where people feel completely unrepresented by the existing parties, and that's where I think that the chess pieces are still shifting. And I think fundamentally, though, no consent form lasts for 3 years. We're 3 years since the referendum, with a completely different prospect on the table to the one that people voted for. And that's, until we resolve that, I'm afraid we're always going to be going around in circles arguing about it.
And at least, Nandy, what do you think? Does red-blue still work?
I think that we are still a broad coalition, but it's obviously under extreme tension and not just because of Brexit. But I do think there's a problem with this notion that we're in a different situation now than we were 3 years ago and that we've got something very different on the table. I agree that there was never any suggestion that we would be leaving with no deal, and we should absolutely reject that the public have given us permission to go and do that to the country. But where I differ from Sarah is that I don't think there has been a serious attempt actually over the last 3 years amongst the political parties to try to reach a compromise and to do a deal. We're still arguing about the withdrawal agreement, which is just the technical and legal questions that need to be settled before we even start to negotiate a trade deal. 3 years after we got the result of the referendum, we haven't even started trying to do the hard work, and we have nothing to say to the public about what our future relationship with the EU would be. Now, that isn't the public's fault, that's our fault, and we should be working together collectively to sort it out. I think the consequences of trying to go back to the country and do this all again without having taken seriously the result of the first referendum would be catastrophic for all of us.
OK, we will leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed for those.